The short version of this video is because if they don't, nuclear non-proliferation goes up in smoke. Defensive alliances are the linchpin holding it together. Given the situation in Ukraine, you might have wondered what would happen if Russia said we're invading Estonia or Latvia or Lithuania or Poland, and if you try to do anything, we'll nuke you. What happens then? You've probably heard voices like, it would be unreasonable to risk nuclear apocalypse over some distant tiny nation. But NATO has to call their bluff and still defend. Let's not beat around the bush. Nuclear weapons are not that hard to get for nation-states. Sure, maintaining an arsenal of thousands of ICBMs would be a challenge for any nation, but having a few dozen nukes that will absolutely assure territorial sovereignty is not going to be a problem. How do I know this? Because if North Korea can pull it off, then so can any developed nation. There are over 100 countries that are wealthier than North Korea. If 1 in 5 or even 1 in 10 of those nations decide to go ahead with nuclear programs, sanctions won't cut it anymore. That's a large enough chunk of the global economy to make them effectively unsanctionable. Let's take a look at some likely suspects. By most, this place is called Taiwan and is considered a de facto independent country, even if there's some diplomatic dancing around this issue. If you ask them, they will tell you that the Republic of China. On the other hand, the People's Republic of China takes the view that this is the rebellious province of Chinese Taipei that will eventually reunite with the mainland. This disagreement is something of a problem. The United States has a defense treaty with Taiwan, sort of. It contains some wiggle room for the United States, but if NATO doesn't honor the ironclad Article 5, I think Taiwan is going to be somewhat concerned, and that's putting it mildly. With a highly advanced economy 40 times the size of North Korea's, obtaining nukes is hardly going to be a serious challenge. There's also South Korea, which obviously worries about their neighbor to the north. They also have a defense treaty with the United States, and they would be quite displeased to see the United States not honor their other defense agreements. A nuclear program would likely follow. Japan is another candidate for someone who has reasons for concern should the United States not honor their defense treaties. They are a bit of a coin toss given their obvious history with nuclear weapons, so it feels impossible to predict how they'd react, but they certainly have the economy to pull it off. Poland? Yeah, getting nukes without a doubt, assuming that they're not the first target. Poland has something of a national trauma over the fact that the British and French guarantee of Polish sovereignty didn't exactly amount to much in 1939. If nations started disrespecting their defense treaties, if history repeated itself, a Polish nuclear program would spring up overnight. On top of that, we've got the NATO nuclear sharing program. Participating countries are Turkey, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, and Belgium. If NATO fails its treaty obligations, I have a suspicion that at least some of those nations might decide that sharing is not good enough in a post-NATO world. Unfortunately, it gets worse. After all, many potential nuclear states have tense relations with at least some of their neighbors. For example, if Turkey decided to go nuclear, do you think their rivals would stand idly by? Iran is already in play, and Saudi Arabia would likely follow suit, which in turn could inspire the next wave. Once those dominoes start falling, it's a free-for-all. The end result would be a world where the number of nuclear states would be in the dozens. The more nuclear states there are, the more likely nuclear war is. If you let a state scare you into not upholding a defense treaty like NATO because they threaten a nuclear exchange, you are making a nuclear war more likely, not less. As counterintuitive as it might sound, calling their bluff and risking a nuclear war immediately is the safer option in the long run. Thanks for your time. I made this channel for some of my slightly more controversial, outrageous, or political takes. If you'd like to listen to some of my more chill content that's more about touching grass and self-improvement rather than doom and gloom, you can check out my other channel as well. I think you know the drill, and what I'll ask of you: like, comment, subscribe, share if you found this video entertaining, thought-provoking, or informative.